Boys, come back to me. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Just keep coming back. Keep coming back.
She sat in that cold, echoing courtroom with the weight of the world crushing down on her. At 18 years old, she had already made choices that led her into the darkest chapter of her life. But not even she could have imagined how dramatically her world was about to collapse. Her name had been spoken in whispers at first, a tragic headline pushed aside by newer news. But inside that courtroom, on that fateful day, every eye was fixed on her as the judge prepared to say the words that would define the rest of her life. It was a moment that marks the end of innocence and the beginning of a truth no one escapes, the sentence that would keep her behind bars forever. This is the real case of an 18-year-old who realized she was facing life in prison. She was not a hardened criminal. She was not a gang member. She was not even known previously to law enforcement. On the surface, she was a young woman with hopes and dreams like anyone else. But in a single moment of violence, everything changed. The crime she committed was brutal and senseless, and it shocked her community to its core. The victim was someone she knew intimately, someone she had called family, someone whose life was stolen in a way that left everyone reeling. Her name was Tara King, just 18 years old, and at her side during every step of the legal journey was her co-defendant, and at that time her girlfriend, Uriah Lee Urick Jr., who was also 18 when everything went wrong. This is not a story about what-ifs or might-have-beens. It is not a tragedy told through euphemisms or polite language. This is the unfiltered truth of a crime so shocking that it forced everyone involved, family, friends, the legal system, and even Tara herself, to confront the brutal reality of her choices. It all began months before the crime took place, when Tara and Uriah grew close as teenagers do, sharing secrets, building trust, and becoming inseparable companions. But beneath the surface, something darker was brewing. They were living in a world where drugs, desperation, and reckless fantasies overshadowed even the simplest morals. Tammy King was the victim, the grandmother of Tara's girlfriend, a woman described by friends and relatives as warm, loving, and quietly devoted to her family. A robbery that would result in murder. They wanted money, they wanted guns, they wanted drugs, and they believed they could carry out this plot without consequences. Text messages recovered by authorities showed disturbing talk of ammunition, murder, and meticulous planning that crossed every line of legality and humanity. It was on a cold February morning that Tammy King's world changed forever. The house in Backcliff, Texas, where she lived, was supposed to be a place of safety, a place of love, a place where family gathered. But on that morning, it became a crime scene that would haunt the community and forever mark two young lives. Tara and Uriah, fueled by the plan they had created together, forced their way into the home. The motive was robbery, pure and calculated, but the result was much worse. Tammy was shot in the head, a single fatal blow that ended her life instantly. Her body was later discovered under blankets, a tragic and unsettling end for someone who had done nothing to deserve it. In the days following the murder, investigators uncovered not only the brutality of the crime, but also digital evidence that confirmed the premeditation of the act. Messages between Tara and Uriah made it clear they had discussed the plot in depth. They had thought about it, they had talked about it, and they followed through with it. The shockwaves rippled outward from the courtroom to the streets of Backcliff, drawing the attention of law enforcement, legal analysts, and citizens alike. How could two teenagers walk into someone's home and commit a murder with such detachment? How could they believe they would escape justice? That question would be answered in a sentencing hearing that changed everything. At her trial, Tara's defense attorney spoke of youth and immaturity. They argued that her age, lack of prior criminal history, and supposed naivety should result in leniency. They said that she did not fully understand the gravity of her actions. They painted a picture of a young woman who had made a terrible mistake, not someone who planned a violent murder. But prosecutors laid out the evidence without hesitation. They read the text messages aloud. They presented witness testimony. They outlined every action that led up to the killing. And then they described the aftermath, the flight to Laredo, the attempt to use Tammy's bank account, the capture of both Tara and Uriah by law enforcement. When the judge finally spoke, the courtroom fell silent. There were no dramatic gasps, no sudden outbursts, just a heavy and ominous stillness, as though every person present could feel the gravity of what was about to be said. Tara was facing life in prison without the possibility of parole. Those were the words she had hoped she would never hear. Those were the words that confirmed that everything, her freedom, her future, her life as she knew it, was gone forever. It was the moment she realized that prison would be her home for the rest of her life. The The moment the gavel struck and the official record was made, the moment the doors closed behind her and she understood that there was no turning back. And in that moment, a horrifying truth surfaced. Not just for Tara, but for everyone watching. Crime does not pay, and actions have consequences. Severe consequences. Because at 18, most young people are still building their identities, thinking about college, relationships, careers, travel, the simple excitement of life ahead. No one expects to be standing in front of a judge, hearing a life sentence for murder. No one plans something that violent, with that level of premeditation at such a young age. But it happens, and when it does, the consequences are life-altering. After the sentencing, there was grief, but not just for the victim's family. There was grief in the courtroom, grief outside it, grief for a young woman who made a choice that could never be undone. Friends and relatives had testified in her defense, saying she was kind before this, that she had a good heart, that everyone makes mistakes, but the scale of this mistake was enormous. Cameras outside the courthouse captured sobbing family members of both the victim and the defendant. Some wept for the loss of Tammy King, others wept for the spiral of events that led a young life into ruin. Legal experts later debated the case on national television and news outlets, discussing how juveniles are treated in the justice system, how age factors into punishment, and whether rehabilitation is possible for offenders who commit heinous crimes at such a young age. Some argued that life without parole was necessary to uphold justice. Others said that with mental health support, therapy, and time, even those who commit serious crimes as teenagers could one day be reintegrated into society. But in Tara's case, the judge had chosen the harsher path, life in prison, because the murder was premeditated and chilling in its calculation. Meanwhile, Uriah Lee Urick Jr., who had been her partner in crime, faced his own legal reckoning. His trial was scheduled for January 2026, and the public watched closely to see whether his fate would mirror Tara's. The courtroom remained eerily silent after the sentence was announced. Every person present seemed frozen, unable to fully process what had just occurred. At 18, Tara King had entered that room as a teenager, with all the naivety and hope of youth. She left it as a convicted murderer, condemned to spend the rest of her life behind bars. The gravity of the sentence was not lost on her. She understood now that the freedom she once took for granted, the freedom to laugh, to walk outside without bars, to make choices about her life, had vanished forever. Family members of the victim could barely contain their grief and rage. They had lost someone irreplaceable, someone whose love had been a constant in their lives. At the same time, Tara's own family struggled with feelings of disbelief and sorrow, unable to reconcile the daughter they knew with the young woman sitting in handcuffs before them. Friends, classmates, and community members spoke in hushed tones, struggling to comprehend how a bright young woman could become capable of such violence. Psychologists and legal experts later dissected the case, discussing the combination of peer influence, impulsive decisions, and lack of guidance that contributed to the tragedy. Many noted that the planning and premeditation revealed a chilling understanding of the consequences, yet it did not stop Tara from moving forward with her plan. For those outside, it served as a grim lesson about the fragile line between youthful mistakes and irreversible actions. Tara's realization of life in prison was not immediate. At first, she seemed to grapple with disbelief, as though the words "life without parole" were somehow abstract. But as she was led away from the courtroom, the weight of reality sank in. Every thought of her past, every dream she had for college, travel, or a career dissolved in that instant. There would be no second chances, no moments to undo the choices that led her here. For the victim's family, the justice system offered closure, but it could never bring Tammy King back. For Tara, the sentence represented the finality of consequence, a lifetime to reflect on the actions that shattered multiple lives. The story of an 18-year-old facing life in prison stands as a stark, unflinching reminder that decisions, especially those made in moments of fear, anger, or desperation, can carry consequences that last far longer than anyone anticipates. It is a story of lost innocence, shattered lives, and the haunting realization that some mistakes can never be undone. In the blink of an eye, a life can change forever, and for Tara King, that life is one she will never reclaim. The real tragedy in this case is that no one was truly a winner. A life was lost, a grandmother who deserves so much more than to be taken violently in her own home. Two young people forever separated from freedom and the world they once knew, families destroyed, futures stolen, and a community left to grapple with unanswered questions. Why did they do it? What led two teenagers to plan murder instead of finding help, guidance, or support? At every level, this case reveals cracks in the social fabric, failures of communication, lack of intervention, and the darkness that can take hold when young people feel isolated or driven by destructive impulses. This is not just a story of crime and punishment. This is a story of choices and consequences, of how one split-second decision, followed by another, can unravel entire lives. And as the door closed behind Tara, sealing her into a lifetime sentence, the final reality emerged with chilling clarity. When the justice system speaks, there are no second chances, no do-overs, no reset button. You do the crime, you live with the consequences. For Tara King, that meant life in prison. For first responders, investigators, and everyone who followed this case, it meant confronting the uncomfortable truth that even the youngest among us are capable of the darkest choices. And for the rest of the world, it serves as a haunting reminder. In the blink of an eye, life can change forever. Because justice, once delivered, does not wait for forgiveness.